Welcome to Killer Women with your host, best-selling author, Danielle Girard. The Killer Women Vodcast is pleased to be a part of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. To learn more about Danielle and her books, visit her at www.daniellegirard.com, and to access all of our vodcasts, go to youtube.com/Authors on the Air. And now, Danielle's next killer woman.
Hello, and welcome to Killer Women Podcast, a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Network with over 4 million listeners. I am your host, suspense author Danielle Girard, and my guest today is Lucinda Berry. Dr. Lucinda Berry is a former clinical psychologist and leading researcher in childhood trauma. Now, she spends her days writing full-time, where she uses her clinical experience to blur the line between fiction and nonfiction. She enjoys taking her readers on a journey through the dark recesses of the human psyche. Her work has been optioned for film and translated into multiple languages. If Berry isn't chasing after her son, you can find her running through Los Angeles, prepping for her next marathon, which blows my mind. I hate running. Welcome, Lucinda.
Hi. Thank you for having me. So I was just saying before we started, I'm so happy to meet you.
I know, we
like
started
officially face to face.
Totally.
So.
We started to have a complete conversation. I was like, wait, we gotta record. We're not recording. So okay, so this is your latest book, which it's like a one sitting book. I'm always like, I started a book at like 8, and I'm like 100% I'm gonna put this down at like 10:30, and then it's like 1 and I finished. I'm like, okay, well, I won't feel good tomorrow, but I'm so glad I didn't put it down. So this was fabulous. Tell listeners about Under Her Care.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's like the best compliment ever coming from you. Because she also has some amazing thrillers. But so this one, Under Her Care, it takes place in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So that's fun. And basically, there's been a murder. The mayor's wife has been murdered, and standing over her body is 14-year-old Mason Hill holding a bloody rock. So yeah, the thing that's a little bit complicated about Mason is an autistic boy who's primarily nonverbal. So Casey Walker, who's an autism specialist, is called in to consult on the case. And basically the story becomes, she also, one of the reasons that she's an expert is she also has a daughter with autism. And so it really pits those two mothers against each other, and then all sorts of fucked upness ensues. I can set my books up, and then I'm like, and then I don't know what to say because I can't say anything else without giving things away.
That is what we do. Our job is to, is to set it up, and then basically all fuck upness happens in every book that we write, right? That's the whole idea. It's interesting that you say that about the women, because of course, this is Killer Women. We are here to, we love men, it's not a problem, but we're really here to sort of delve into the female psyche and, what drives us as writers, as mothers, as, sisters, daughters, all that stuff. And actually in the beginning, Casey Walker, who is our protagonist and this autism specialist, she really wants to help. Her role is to help Mason, but also in helping Mason, her goal is also to help the mother. And it's just because of the turn of circumstances that they become pitted against each other, which is, you have to read the book, because I'm not going to tell you what that's all about. And it's, all of your books are like this. They are just the right speed and length. It's like, I start one and I think, it's not like if I were starting Anna Karenina, it's weeks, but it's like, I am starting a Lucinda Berry book, and I am an idiot to start this at 8 p.m. I should just start it at 5 so I can finish it in one day and go to bed like a normal person. But I of course never do that. But they're just perfectly paced for like a one long wonderful evening. So brava again. Okay, I got all sidetracked. So obviously, as your bio says, and you've had an incredible experience. You worked at UCLA with real clinical patients and situations. So obviously, you're drawing from that experience. Can you identify the kernel that became, Under Her Care? Was there a person, a moment, something?
So I hate to say this word because it's such a buzzword and like everybody talks about it, but like, I'm sort of fascinated with the narcissistic mom. Uh, uh, and it sprung from that, and happening to know it actually came from like the Miss USA and that whole beauty scene and the South and all of
Right.
that is where it started.
Yeah.
And then I had, like, I was like you said, like I was a psychologist for 20 plus years, and so a lot of it, all my characters are based on just different people that I've pulled things from. So a lot of people were like people that knew me with like Casey Walker, they're like, it's her degree, is that you? And I was like, well, I actually did the same fellowship at Children's Hospital, so like there's pieces of that like all the testing that's in the book is there's like lots of psych testing in the book at different periods, and so like all the psych testing is very realistic, because I mean I've only done
it
10 hours of it,
right.
So I mean stuff, I just pull from all of that, and then like the world around me. I mean, all of my stuff really almost always starts from like something that happened, and then I'm like, what if?
Right.
And then I'm just gone,
well,
like,
sorry, I just want
no, that's fine. No,
finish up. But I was just gonna say, like, it's interesting to me because actually one of the things you said that totally, pinged my brain is that the narcissistic mother, when, your experience is of course focused on these children, but God, children do not live in any sort of vacuum. They are, surrounded by these, and it's probably slightly insane, maybe because of trauma, like raising a kid
so
who's
you
nonverbal.
bring up a great point, and nobody's ever brought that up before, Danielle. That's because you have such a brilliant fucking mind, is that every kid you see their their parents or whoever their caregiver is, because you don't ever see a kid in isolation.
Right.
For one, you always, have, whether it's their foster parent, their social worker, you're always involved with the caregivers, and those are, I cannot even tell you. So all of the parents, all of that is there too, because you don't
And
see
you almost
the kid
have to
in
work
isolation. And like some of the hardest people, like I will never forget the first mom that I had to sit in the therapy room that like sort of like not unapologetic, but basically unapologetically had allowed her 6 and 8 year old little girls to be sexually abused by her boyfriend, and so you treat those people too, like just as much as you're with the kids, and like being in those minds. And I mean, learning how to like, right, like how do you how do you work with a patient, like you know what I mean? So like all of that stuff, all
how
the
do you
parents,
not wring her neck?
Like just across the room and choke them and through the wall, so
and you're really dealing through the parents, because the parents are the ones who have the control of these children. So, and if the parent has a diagnosis, which, I mean, let's be honest, as parents, naturally things like anxiety, there's a lot of diagnoses, I mean, attention deficit disorder.
Should I start raising my hand?
I know, me too. I must, I mean, all of those things, you have to manage that first almost, because otherwise you can't even, how do you help a child whose primary caregiver isn't competent or capable, of being there for them? That is
right.
I mean,
that's one of the reasons that it's heartbreaking to work with children, is because like there's only so much that you can do because they are completely powerless to make changes in their lives, right? Like an adult, you can you can like, hey, get a new job, and like an adult can go and get a new job, and you can be like, oh, how about you like don't live in that apartment that makes you super depressed, like why don't you maybe live somewhere else? But like with kids, like they're stuck. So like unless you treat and change the world around them, like it doesn't matter what
I mean, how did you do that for 20 years? So fucking hard. I mean, I'm glad you did it, because people need to do it. I'm so glad.
It's so hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's why I did it for 20 some years, and then it was like, it's time to you know, it's time to go away. It's, you know, and we call it, there's a name for it now. We call it secondary traumatic stress, you know, people that work, you know, in trauma, and in those, and, you know, like you can't live and hear it day in and day out and not, you know, you know,
because you're a mom. You have, you have a child.
I will say though, after my son was born, all I did was teach for like 3 years because I couldn't.
Isn't that interesting?
There was no way. I was like, if I get into a room and I hear like, I mean, because just horrific like things done to children, I was like, I will literally just start sobbing, which is not what you want your therapist to do ever. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you don't want, when you're telling you don't ever want your therapist to be like, oh my God.
But it's a whole different level. I mean, it's a whole different level of, you know, you think, oh, I understand what mothering is because I have a mother or my friends have children, but it opens up a whole, no, my dogs are all gonna go crazy. It opens up an entire part of our like vulnerability and hearts, and
it changes everything. And you think, you know, like I remember saying, like everybody, I remember saying that like my life wasn't going to be all that different, right? Like I'm not going to change all that much when I have a kid. I did, and I really believed that, like to my soul, right?
I know.
And you just, you don't know, and you don't know the ways that it will change you until after it happens. And like,
and we have healthy children, right? We have children who are, you know, they're not learning disabled. They're not physically disabled. I mean, and we have resources, right? I mean, we have people like you that we can access to help us. And, you know, here you have this world of people who don't. Motherhood is, I'm so sorry. Can you hear how loud my fucking dogs are?
No, I can't even hear your dogs.
Oh, good. Sorry. I apologize, everyone.
No, I don't hear them at all.
So. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, well then never mind. It's just maybe hallucinations, which also happens sometimes. Okay, so it was just 3 years. So your son is how old now?
So my son is 13 now. Yeah. So he's 13.
And it was just 3 years ago, you were telling me before we started that you actually started writing full time. So I want to hear your story, because as far as I'm concerned, you've been out in the world for a million years, and I feel like there's a million of your books out in the world. So, but I guess maybe that's not exactly true. So tell us, how did you start? You were a clinical psychologist, you're working at UCLA. When did you start to write?
So I started writing when I was a little kid. I've always written since I was teeny, tiny, you know, itty bitty. I used to like make up stories and have my mom write them down. But it was never anything. It was just always this thing that I did. And it was never, you know, and I also grew up in like it was a long time ago, and I grew up very rural Midwest. And so being a writer wasn't like, oh, you're gonna be a writer when you grow up. That was not what was programmed. You know, it just wasn't. So, but I always wrote, I mean, I had like poems published in like the local newspaper. Like, I wrote my first book, The Overnighters, when I was like in 4th grade. It was like my first 100-page book. It was
amazing. Where is it now? We need it.
So, I gave it to my like 4th grade English teacher, and he never gave it back to me. It's super, my mom's like convinced. She's like, it's on the shelf somewhere.
Right, exactly. Under a different title.
Right. So yeah, so I'd always written, and then, and then, you know, life happened or whatever. And I still always journaled. I still always wrote. I specialized, I mean, as soon as my major was, psychology, which was like, what? I mean, I went to school for so dang long. However, whatever space you are when you like declare.
Like
but whenever I declared my major, I also knew I wanted to do trauma. So I was like specialized since then. And so really like ever since then, I always have had a notebook. I'm a real pen to paper. I'm just,
me
I'm also
too. I have it right beside me.
Tactile. I have I mean, I've got like neurodiversity, neurotypical stuff. So anyways, but so I always had a notebook, and so just always like jotting down characters, story ideas, all these just like messed up things that I was hearing and learning about. And some of it was fiction, some of it was nonfiction, you know, but so I was just like always writing. And then this thing happened between 2 twins. Phantom Limb again is based on, you know, a relatively started truthfully. So this thing happened where I don't want to get to, but whatever. So like this thing happened where these 2 twins were like really abused, and one of them died. Right.
Okay.
And well, it was awful. They were like severely abused. Then they were rescued
Oh.
And then once they were rescued, the one of them got meningitis and then died. It was like this
Oh.
awful thing, and she was treating them and all of that. So Phantom Limb sprung from that event,
Yeah.
and I started writing it. And I think
What a
that
fabulous
happened.
title, by the way. Because phantom
Thank
limb
you.
is a thing that we now hear a lot about, right? Where you like somebody loses
Yeah.
a limb and they can still feel it. It itches.
They can
It's
still feel
painful.
it.
It's really a powerful, post-traumatic thing for people. So it's a great title for two twins.
It was like, it's one of my favorite titles, actually.
It's a great,
One
I
of my
know. And
favorite
titles, I think titles might be harder than books, personally.
Titles
Okay,
are so, I agree.
Okay, so
So
phantom
anyway,
limb.
I just start writing, this book, and it's just turning into a book, because this time it's more than a story, and it's more than just and I'm just going, and I'm in this whole thing. So like I start graduate school, and and I'm just writing it sort of whenever I can, and it's like this escape, which is funny because it's like I'm in psychology and then escaping to this dark world, but
more psychology.
somehow it's like I don't know,
right?
I don't
no,
know,
it's like, a different, it's fiction,
right?
still,
But it's
right?
I don't know. So I finish it, and shortly after I moved to Los Angeles, and did the whole like finding an agent thing. Took me forever to find an agent, but for me it was fine, because it was just like I just really liked the book, and like
it was like
wanted
a hobby
to share it with the world. It wasn't like I was still like really immersed in like the psychology world. The writing was like, this is just a really cool, fun story, because really ultimately, like, I just love to entertain. Like, I just love to entertain.
Story,
I like to twist your brain and make you think about things that you've not, all these things.
You do that very well.
So I'm like, but anyway, so I finally land an agent. Kimberly, I was telling you, it was Kimberly Witherspoon, like James Patterson. So I land a super reputable agent, which I'm so happy about, right? Because you're in this world. Any writer knows, like that's, so I land this amazing agent, and and she can't sell Phantom Limb. So this is what I was telling you before. So she can't sell Phantom Limb. It goes out, comes back, and everybody says the same thing, we can tell.
What do they say?
Which is she's too dark. We love her, but she's too dark. She's too dark. She's too dark. And we hear it like a gazillion times. And
that is, I'm sorry. I feel like we need to talk about that just for a moment, because it's like, she is too dark. I sort of wonder, like, had you been Lucinda Berry, which would have been interesting, is it because we're women writers? I mean, I get that like, wow, how does somebody so sweet looking write such dark stuff? And like Hannah Morrissey, she said basically that's what they said about her first book. It's too dark. No. I mean, it's like, there's so much dark stuff. Has anybody read the dark? There's so many dark authors,
I mean, and then like, look what came out. I mean, like, look what's, I mean, like this, I mean, like,
right. There's everywhere there's dark stuff. It's just, I do wonder if it's a female thing, but anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, but it was, and I'm also like, what is too dark? What does that even mean? I'm too like, what,
you're talking about my head in there. You're talking about what's going on in my head. Don't be casting all your negativity on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then,
we couldn't sell it. And then it just so happened. So then, she's like, well, why don't you like write something else, and at that time I was just like, just kind of, cause I'm like, I really had just like wrote this like great story that I thought was great, wanted to share with the world. So then it just so happened that one of my friends, Kate Danley, and this would have been like 2015-ish. She was a huge like fantasy author, indie author, and had done just absolutely amazing, was killing it, still kills it. Anyways, and she was like, have you ever thought of doing it by yourself, of like just publishing the book? And I was like, no, all this and that. And so anyways, I had the whole thing of,
do I do it by myself?
Do I do it by myself? Should I keep going? What should I do? Whatever. And so then I finally ended up doing it myself. So I did it myself. I learned I just like, I studied for probably about a year, just like everybody that was doing it and doing it well. And like, how do you do it? How do you, and really how you market a really good self-published book, as you make it look, you should not be able
Tell
So
the
look at
difference.
that book and
Right,
tell
right.
that it's like, you should be, you know, indistinguishable. You should look
Yeah.
just like a traditionally published book in any
Yeah.
form or fashion of it. So anyways, that was my little PSA.
Yeah, so true. It's so
for
true.
any indie person out there. That's the first thing, is like, you have to have a good product. So
yes,
with the packaging, all that stuff.
the
Anyway,
packaging and the editing, you can't have errors, and you have to have somebody else do it, because you don't find your own errors. It's just the truth of the matter. And I don't know where to put the commas.
Right, you don't. And the reason that Phantom Limb was looked the way it did when I did publish it, is because the manuscript had been worked over and edited like so many times by my agent and all of their people. So it was a polished, finished, really solid manuscript, you know. So anyways, it went out, and then it did really well. So it did really well. It hit got in the top like 100 and just like stayed there for a while. And then people came to me. And so that was, so I published Phantom Limb in like 2017, and then 2018. So 2018, I just then signed a 2-book deal with Thomas and Mercer.
Yep.
As you know them well.
Yes.
And so I signed a 2-book deal with Thomas and Mercer. And then it just so happened at the time that I did that I was finishing up a 4-year contract that I'd had at UCLA. Like the timing with that was really similar. And and so I just decided, rather than get on another project at the center, I was like, you know what, I think I'm done. And that was 3 years ago. So that
one book out. And you had signed you had a 2-book contract from Thomas Mercer, who's also was my publisher, and you quit your day job. That's like that.
Well, I didn't just have 1 book out. So Phantom Limb came first, and then before I signed Phantom Limb came first, and then I had 2 other books in between that set to go that I released 2 to 3 months, or however many months it was a piece. So I had Saving Noah and Appetite for Innocence both came out
smart
interim. So I went boom, boom.
That's how you do that's how really successful self-published authors are doing this, right? Because the thing is, with 1 book, it's not enough to really get the momentum going. But so smart. Brilliant.
Well, and it's all about, if you're going to be a self-published author and you're going to be on Amazon, and that's going to be your predominant platform, then you direct like everything to Amazon. Do you know what I mean? And through Amazon. And so if you have, and directly, to your next book afterwards, like then Amazon starts to work for you. So like if you work with them, they,
the algorithm can be your
algorithm will. And I've always, I've just always tucked myself in there, and I've always modeled myself after what the indies do, because I'm with Thomas and Mercer, and they're a predominant,
Amazon
publisher. So so it works.
It's awesome. Okay, so then your first.
That was like the longest answer on the planet.
No, that's good. I wanted to know the history, and I think people are really interested. I think it is also interesting to. I mean, the thing I hear over and over again, and the thing we know as authors of multiple books, is that you had, when you said I think this is the only story I want to tell, then you definitely weren't like ready to be a full-time author, right? You were like, but then clearly in between that moment and for sure now, and even 2017, you were like, no, I think I'm going to give this writing thing another go. You have to.
It wasn't so much that I didn't want to be like, I wanted. It was just to have that be who I was, and let go of. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It was like, and I was just saying to you, like I still feel like weird even calling myself a writer. I'm always like, I'm a psychologist, but I write now, because it feels, I don't know,
that imposter syndrome. It's just,
I don't even know.
It doesn't matter. I'm 16 books in. I still feel like an imposter.
It never goes away.
Published every which way. I've done my own. I've self-published. I was published by Penguin Putnam. I've been published by Thomas and Mercer. I just put out a book by myself again. It's like, it doesn't matter. And it's funny. I was at Thriller Fest recently, and we missed you. You have to come next year because it is really fun. And I was talking to Greg Hurwitz, who's like a big deal, right? He's massive. Yeah. And and he was like, nice to meet you. I've heard your name. What's your latest project? And immediately I went, "Ooh," right? Because or he said, I said, I just put out a novella, The X, which is a prequel to a series I have. And he's like, who's your publisher? That's what he said. And I was like, and there I am. I'm just like, I did this one by myself. And he was great. He was like, awesome, good for you. But I was like, I don't, I want to be able to say, I don't know, the big guys, they published 1 million copies. It's just it's a game. Like we have to, and this is more, is it more female or is that my imagination? Are we harder on ourselves?
I mean,
right?
Generally speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, yes. No, but I mean, that's good to know that after 16 books, you're still like,
Is it good to know, Lucinda, or is it really sad?
Or maybe you just need help.
Well, the good news is it's not just me. I've spoken to others, but it's not that encouraging. But let's go back now and talk about, because one of the things about the Under Her Care that we were talking about is the sort of the mom and the parenting and how that changes us. So, what does being a mom, like especially for somebody who writes, all of your books feature a traumatized child. That's like, that's your history, that's your research, that's your knowledge. Yay! Traumatized children.
But it's great.
Go see Dr. Berry. But actually, so how did being a mom change that? And how do you feel like it sort of deepens your books? Because I think it does. I think it must.
It absolutely did. The first thing that happened though when I became a mom is I wanted to go to every parent that I'd ever worked with as a therapist and apologize that I ever thought it was that easy.
So true.
First of all, I wanted to send out a blanket email of like, I am so sorry.
Yes.
That I thought I knew it all. So that was like the first thing. But I didn't practice for the first 3 or 4 years of his life. I just taught because I didn't, I just was too open.
Yeah.
But I will say that it also, as far as writing goes, it also did, because I'm a pretty guarded person, just like in general. Like I'll talk to anyone. I'm a people person. I'm a talker, I'll get going, but really letting, people inside
the stuff. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he he just cracked himself in there, right? He just like cracked open these parts of me that I didn't even know that I had, right? And so it did, it did influence my writing in a lot of ways. A Perfect Child is like, I wrote that short when he was pretty young. Started pulling out, notes that I kept on sociopathic kids over the years. But Hannah's character in that, if anyone,
that's a fabulous book. Everyone has to go back and read that. There's actually there's quite a few fabulous ones, but I remember A Perfect Child very clearly.
Yeah. So Hannah's the mother, right? So she's the mother. So a lot of her experience in that and her darkness in that comes from periods of my postpartum, because I had a really colicky, my kid did not stop crying for many months. And the sleep deprivation and all of those things. And so much of her experience comes from me in those moments, realizing I know exactly how people get, because you can see where those lines are, or maybe that's just me.
Right.
But and so her character was born out of that period of time, sort of like in my own life and all of the mothers around me, right? Those first 2 years, you know them, right? Because it's just the hormones alone, right? Like I used to, it's like you become a mom and it's like the hormone surge. It's like, it felt like somebody took my brain out of my head. Right. And then just shook it around like a snow globe and then plopped it back in, and it's like,
It's
you
such a
know.
disadvantage to be, I don't think adoptive mothers are that much better. Like, I don't know that it's just the pregnancy hormones. There's something about that kid that loosens every insecurity you ever had your entire
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah, it just
Shit,
yeah.
just
I mean, it just
spreads it around the
dislodges
room like
everything in
confetti.
your heart. Like, I mean, just all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it can't not affect, what comes out on the page in some way,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
And it
interesting that
definitely did. I mean, it definitely opened me
and you
in a
talk
different
about
way.
that like that particular darkness of that period, because now my kids are 20 and 22, and I'm so far removed, but it's trauma. It's little t trauma, but it's trauma, and I can go back there and remember those days. But most days I don't think about how hard that was, how isolating, how lonely. And I think I think for women who are out there having babies right now, and particularly pandemic, can you imagine having
Oof.
had an infant
No,
or
no.
a pre, having a bunch of kids that you had to homeschool as well as an infant. Anyway, I think
Yeah.
these women, for them, it's a gift to read about somebody who's struggling, because it's like it normalizes it. You are not alone. I mean, not everyone's going to have a sociopath child, thankfully, but even just
Right.
the emotions of Hannah, just the sort of the normal maternal shit is so
At the
comforting.
sleep deprivation, I mean, if you have the sleep, I mean, sleep deprivation is real. I mean, there's a reason that they use it as a form of psychological torture in, with criminals, because it's, so yeah, like all those periods, those years are very unique. I mean, I mean, God, my kid's a teenager now, and I'm like, this period is so,
I know, it's so,
every period's like, this is.
Yeah.
So.
You're like, it was so easy when they were little child, little problems, big child, big problems. But
right.
yeah, but I'm not, I don't know. The sleep deprivation is real. And you don't realize, I mean, I always thought, well, I'm a sleeper. I love sleep, but I never thought I needed it. As much of it, quite as much as I did. But I realized like for my emotional process, sleep is how I process. So like when things are really overwhelming for me, I'll sob and then I'll go to sleep. And it's like my defense mechanism. It's like when I can kind of, I just, because I want to be alone, I want to curl in. And so I think that, and then to take that away from me when at the time when probably, I need it the most was, and I don't think I'm alone. I think for a lot of people that quiet, is peaceful and brings us down. And yeah, you don't get enough of that. And it's not just the infancy, it's what now, I mean, 2 years ago, it was them coming home. They're going to be home by their curfew, and you can't go to sleep until they're home. And yeah, it girlfriend, it just doesn't end. It doesn't end. It doesn't end. I don't know what to say. Okay, so tell us about your process. So you have a kernel that stems off, and it sounds like you mentioned that you pulled sort of some story out from some notes you had from before. Like you said, you're a big note taker. So do you have kind of is there like a secret
I always
folder?
have a notebook in my life, or multiple notebooks in my life. Always. So I'm jotting things down. And then, I mean, I'm not a plotter. I've tried, and it feels like I hate writing synopsises, even, because I'm like, I would rather write a book than write
I have
that,
said
because
that.
I hate
I have said
trying,
that.
like, because so much I don't know what's gonna happen when I start, and and I have like little ideas and stuff, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, it happens differently for each book, sometimes it's an idea, sometimes it's a character, sometimes it's like a really, like, Secrets of Us actually started out from this news article that I read on this like super fucked up disorder that I'd never heard of before, which I love when I find, I'm like, I've never heard of that. So that, I mean, and then that a book, you know what I mean? Like, I just
and Best of Friends had to start from some scenario about, the sort of these, I mean, that the three friends and their parents, and God, I mean, yeah, I can see how your world spins. And I agree with you 100% on the pantsing. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is true for those of us who can't plot, is that I think for us, the magic of writing is in discovering as we write what's going to happen. And if you already knew, then it's not.
Yeah, it feels so different. It feels like I'm writing, and I don't like to feel like I'm writing, if that makes sense. And I don't know if it's because I have such an academic background, right? Because like that,
You've done
but
so
yeah,
much
I mean,
writing.
it just like it's like I feel like I'm writing instead of, and I don't like feeling like I have to get, you know, it just it really, really actually stunts my process.
It's like
when I try to plot, it actually
you're more exploring.
it messes it up.
When you're in the book, it's like you're kind of exploring. What are these people going to do? Where are they going to take me? Rather than,
like for example, so like in Secrets of, or not Secrets of Us, this is Under Her Care. I'm like, this book, what book did I just? But so when I started this one, the character in here, Savannah, didn't even exist. Like she just happened.
Yeah.
She just happened organically as I went along, right?
Yeah, Mason's sister.
Which was yeah, and she's like one of them, you know.
Yeah.
So she, you know, and that never would have happened if I was like,
right.
You know,
so then you're going back then, because you get to a certain point and you realize, wow, I'm going to introduce this character who is, you know, the other child of this mom and, you know, Mason's sister. And so then you went back and kind of, you know, well, because really the thing is, if you don't plot, then you're always sort of writing in that circular motion, right? I mean, you always have to kind of go back.
And it just, you know, and it wasn't too tough to do in this instance. It was, you know, it was like pretty easy. But yeah, I think that that's a good description. Is I like, it is a much more circular process.
Yeah, because you have to kind of go back and
right?
This thing. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And it changed it changed, like as soon as she was introduced and I had an idea for her, because when she was introduced, I knew where I wanted to go with her. That was how she came to me. And I was like, yeah. So then it just, you know, again, like then it sort of changed everybody too, you know, and everyone's, you know, so and that's what I like that's my favorite, like I love that, like I think you summed it up perfectly, like that's the fun part, like that's the fun part. And so like, plotting, I'm like, it's just
so hard. Although, you know, do you find that since you're not plotting, right, you don't really necessarily know where you're going to go, you know, are you I got a couple questions. It's like, this is how my brain was like, I got 5 questions. I'm going to wrap them into one. The first one is, you know, how do you realize when you've gotten to the wrong, like when you're going down the wrong corner or down the wrong road and you need to sort of back up? And on top of that, I guess the question is, are you carrying these characters around all the time, everywhere you go, in the back of your mind, sort of working through what's going to happen with them? And, you know, and how do you manage that? There's my 5 questions in one.
Well, carrying them around, that one's easy. I don't carry them around all the time. Like one of the reasons that I run is because I clear my head of all writing. Like I don't, you know, it's sort of like a meditative thing for me.
Yeah.
I am like a huge, I'm sort of weird. Like I like manual labor. I know that's bizarre, but like I'm from Minnesota. Like I'm from a very small town in Minnesota. Like I just grew up working and I grew up doing manual labor. And so a lot of times what I will do is like, if I'm struggling with like a plot point or something, right? Or I've written myself into a corner and I'm like, you know, or like, where am I going? I just like put it down and then I just like go OCD clean my kitchen. Like, I mean, cupboards, or like I go outside and I'm like, I'm gonna chop down this whole tree right now.
Right.
And that's, and I sort of work it out of me, but not mentally. I don't know if that makes any sense.
You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about it necessarily, but it's happening back there, which is I was sort of wondering about the running. I have a thing about running. My running quote is, I only run if I'm being chased. 100%. I hate to run. I hate it so much. I wish I loved it, because I see, and you're built like a runner. I'm not built like a runner. I feel like I see these people running and I think that looks like so magical that you can just keep doing that beyond like the first 100 feet. when I'm like, wait, are we done yet? It seems like we should be done. But I know what you mean, because I actually I'll build a bookshelf. I mean, like, put something together, or I'll one time we got a set of silver, which I've never used in my entire marriage, but every once in a while I take it out and polish it, right? Super dumb. But the whole idea is that it's just, you're doing something that is physical, that occupies your brain. Folding laundry works too, which is super bummer, but it does it. And that I think that is when a solution can come, right?
Yeah.
So do you feel like, do you ever, so I have my problem is that sometimes I keep working. I'm like, I know I'm not going the right way, but I'm like, I can move this boulder. I can just move it. So, how does that work for you? Like, you're like, something about this isn't right. How soon do you sort of realize, wait?
Well, if I'm really attached to it, I really try to push it. Like, if I'm really attached, I'm like,
Sisyphus.
Yeah, I'm like, I can figure out a way. A lot of times what happens to me though, more often than anything though, is like, it's after I send like the first draft away, right, for the big developmental edit, and then I get it back, and then and they're like, and I realize, like, it's usually that read where I'm like, what the hell did I just do there? Like, what was I thinking? Like, that makes no sense. You know?
So you have so it takes an outside reader, which I think is, I think that's true for me too. I think it takes and that's really, it's interesting, because I feel like I really want to be, we're plenty of books in, and I feel like at some point, aren't I going to get smart enough to be like, why do I want to write 160,000 words for one 90,000 word book when I could just do it right the first time? Why is that? When am I going to learn? I want to know. That's my question. I mean, but it's an interesting thing. And I don't know it. I sometimes don't know though, if I got stopped in the middle of my messy first draft, if I still wouldn't mess it up a whole new way. Like, if you have to you have to do that draft your own messy, wrong way first.
I think you do. I really think you do. I mean,
Good.
I really, really do. I really think
I feel better about that.
I do. I mean, that's the same thing that I tell anybody that's like, it's just, I mean, you just, you know what I mean? I think we just get our first drafts out, right? And then we work with the words.
The shitty first draft.
It's like, write the shitty first draft and go from there. But yeah, I mean, or my favorite thing to do is like introduce a pet, and then then the pet's gone like 4 chapters in. You know what I mean? Like, the dog's there, and then like suddenly the dog,
you forgot.
That was one of my editors was like, she had a dog in like chapter 2. I was like,
you inadvertently killed that poor dog. Oh my God.
She did have a pet. Never mind. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's just, and your books are standalones. Have you done
my books are all standalones? Yeah, they're all
don't they usually say to you, I mean, I feel like every publisher always says, with every book I've ever written, Exhume was a standalone, Whiteout was a standalone, and they're like, okay, we're in a series. And I'm like, that's not how I did. So how are you, what happens? How are you avoiding that? You kill the main characters and it's impossible.
I don't know. No. Yeah. I mean, like the other part is that every single one of my books, I could do some sort of a series off of if I wanted to. Sure. Most of them end in a way that I could. There's also scenarios in each of them that I could. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think like a year, maybe that's not this round, but the last round when we were pitching ideas, we talked about a series. Yeah. And the whole Thomas and Mercer team was like, nah, we don't think so. Like, let's just keep rolling.
Because people love your standalones. And actually the scenarios
and so I'm like,
yeah, your scenarios are so specific and unusual that I think you're not writing about, I mean, you could 100% have a, trauma psychologist who handles cases with the, the LAPD or whoever, right? I mean, that would actually be a really interesting series. I would love to read that. But, given your success where you are and the ability to create a whole new world each time, there's sort of magic in that. And, why mess with success, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, let's just, let's just keep rolling. Let's go with what works and
keep rolling. So how many
books it get hard to write in the same, like, what's the biggest number of books you have in a series? Because I know you have a couple.
So the first series I ever wrote, The Rookie Club, is 5 books, but
Okay.
it's not really a series. It was a cheater series. We call it Rookie Club because it's a group of women in the San Francisco police department before there were a lot of women. So it was like a group of women who bonded together, and then each book features one of them. Books 1 and 5 feature sex crimes inspector Jamie Vale. So there's a little bit of that. The real series that I wrote was the X series. This
Okay.
Dr. Annabelle Schwartzman, who's a medical examiner, and that was 4 books. And she
Okay.
was introduced. Actually, Annabelle appeared in the last Rookie Club book. That's where she was born. So it's kind of a spin-off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
Yeah.
then you did a spin-off. Okay.
And
Is
that's
it hard?
fun.
Like when you got to like book like 3 or 4, is it hard? Does it get hard to like
Well,
people who have like 7, 8, 9? I'm like, wow, like
7, 8, 9. I talked to Catherine Coulter this week. She's on number 26 of her FBI thriller series. I'm like, I don't even know how you keep that stuff in your head, you know? I find the way it worked for me is because there's a big arc. Annabelle Schwartzman has left a very abusive marriage, and her ex-husband is the series arc is him, right?
Okay.
The series arc is him. So
Is him. Okay.
he's around for 4 books. Spoiler alert: in the book Expire, he's no longer around. I mean, he is, but not after that ends. So that made it easier. And I do think for me I'm a little, maybe I'm antsy, right? I like a new world. So I think if I didn't have to go back and really take care of Spencer, I don't know that I would have wanted to keep writing that series. And I love reading series. I mean, I really do. But it's a different beast. There's something lovely about going back to a character, right? Because it's kind of familiar, and you don't forget about her dog because she has the dog and those kinds of things. But it's also so fun to create a new world. So speaking of new worlds, what number book is this? I got to keep track. I know I've read at least a few of them, but how many?
6. Yeah,
I love when you're like, I'm not really sure. Let me count.
Yeah. 6. Yeah, and then I have my next one.
Talk to us about that. That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, my next one is January. And then I'm currently, waiting to see what I'm gonna do next for end of 2023, 2024. So all that stuff's going on. Yeah, so I've been on like a 9-10 month schedule for like 3 years. Yeah. So I crank those bad boys out.
You do. Okay, wait, tell us, give us the title and tell us a little bit about before everything gets fucked up, because we know that will happen.
So my next one is Off the Deep End, and I'm sort of obsessed with messed up moms these days, right? So like Under Her Care really looks at some interesting mom dynamics, and Off the Deep End is the same way. So Off the Deep End, a mom is driving her 2 boys, or her son is in the back seat with this other boy, Isaac. They're going around the lake. A deer jumps out. They swerve to miss the deer. Into the lake they go. They plunge into the icy lake. She only has time to grab one kid. She thinks she's grabbing her kid. She swims to the surface, and she's grabbed the other boy, and her boy drowns. And she loses
it's
her
already
mom.
So awesome.
So she grabs
everything. It's traumatic and exciting. Okay, so sorry. So then she comes.
So she grabs. I can't even. So
no.
Into the lake she goes. She grabs another boy instead of her own, and then basically just like it's whole like, how insane can you go from grief, basically, right? From that angle. And so the story then itself, that's sort of like the prologue, and then the story itself takes place 10 months later, when Isaac, this boy that she rescued instead of her own son, has gone missing, and she's one of the primary suspects in that investigation, given her complicated relationship with him that only gets more complicated as the story goes on. And so and so then that one is told from the perspective of the mom that went into the lake, and then the mom whose boy she saved and is now missing. So yes,
I do
trigger
love
warnings
the multiple,
all over that book too, by the way.
I love the multiple moms. I think
I'm like obsessed lately with messed up moms. I'm not.
I mean, isn't it true that, like, I mean, think about it, we're first of all, I think moms are we're so hard on ourselves, but we're also kind of brutal to each other, right? I mean, you watch the moms, like the moms who are like, you can only be a stay-at-home mom versus the moms who are like, you can only be a working mom. Like, you bring those women together, and no war in the history of the world can compete with
Well, no, I always say, like, women, we could rule the entire world if we could just be nice to each other.
It's so true. God, it's so true. Yeah,
That's
so
my
that
other
is
PSA. I'm full of PSAs.
I know, right?
in
I love
this.
it. No, we needed more of those. But I, that's really true. And I can't quite identify. Well, I know why. I mean, obviously, this is the most personal thing. And if you feel like someone's attacking you, you're a bad mother. And for some reason, we can't get our arms around the fact that there's a million good ways. There's a million ways to be a fine mother.
Right.
There's no perfect
or that
mother.
you can hold those two opposed, seemingly contradictory ideas can be true. You can be a good mom and a bad mom at the same time, and there's space for them both. I mean, not like bad mom, like
no,
the
no,
moms
no.
in my book.
No, not like the moms that were at your, not like the moms that were in your therapy room. But I think I think that's the problem, is we all have bad mom moments, I mean, I don't know any mom who hasn't been like, I need to just put you in front of the television for a little while because I'm going crazy. So, but I think you're totally right. Well, so that's super exciting. I love that you're getting these out. And then do you have something you're working on?
Well, so
Yes.
I mean, conversations are happening this week because I don't know what I have the green light for yet. So
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. So it's a very weird.
I know, right?
Because I always have. I think this is the first time, maybe in like 3.5 years, that I haven't been, because I'm not even editing anything right now, because it just so happens to be that's where my books are in production. So it's like,
it's weirdly, you're unmoored. That's how I think of it. You're like a little boat, and most of the time we're on the water. It's all fine because we're like at least anchored to something, even if we move a little bit. But you're out in the wild ocean. That's really,
yeah. Like, I'm waiting to see
feeling.
what's going to happen in my life in the next
I know
couple
Could
years,
somebody
right?
decide,
What are you?
Somebody
What
decide
are you
my
working on?
future. So I wrote a book that my agent didn't like. And I love my agent. So it was brutal, called The Surrogate. Actually, interesting talking about mothers. And then I wrote, I'm writing the third book in the Hagen series, which will come after Far Gone. And that was like, I'm sort of going back to my, to home and to my people to kind of get a little bit of consolation for this 1.5 years I spent on a book and then I'm going to start the Surrogate again in a whole new way. I felt really attached to the story. I'm really attached to the story for whatever reason. And I don't have any real firsthand experience with surrogacy, but I think it's the mom. I'm interested in the mom aspect of it, what we will do to be a mother, and and what it's like to carry somebody else's baby. All these things really interest me. So I'm going to go back to that.
She didn't like it?
No, but actually, it's so funny. I mean, I think it's like you talked about. I wrote a first draft of a book that was very exploratory. I also don't like to send in partials of my books, which is not very smart, right? Somebody should see 100 pages and be like, you're not on the right track. So I wrote the whole thing, all 400 pages. And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, so, but that's, that is also part of it. And I feel like it's not fair to aspiring authors or listeners to not tell you that it sometimes it's just the way it goes. So
it's a brutal business.
It really
is. It's like
totally. And that's why I'm so grateful for, the people that are in it with me who can say, this was a really bad day. Somebody will text me and be like, did you have a bad day? I'm like, I had the worst day. So, we're in this together, but, this is so exciting. Okay. Well, I'm super excited to see what's going next. And I hope you'll come back and visit us. But in the meantime, like, if you guys have not read Lucinda Berry, you are missing out on some very amazing twisted behavior. That's sort of like twisted behavior and action and
twisted behavior. I love it.
Fast pace and darkness. Darkness. I don't think you're too dark though, Lucinda.
Thank you. I don't think I'm too dark. I don't think you can be too dark.
No, I mean,
I
think
don't
about,
know.
there's so many, we could just talk all day about all the dark stuff that's out there. That's incredible. It's really powerful. So tell everybody where to find you. What's your, website? Are you on social media?
So yeah,
All that good stuff.
basically all my handles on social media are Lucinda Berry author. So that's super easy. Yeah. And then Amazon, like go to Amazon. That's where you can find all of my books.
And you can follow her, so you can find out. I love the follow thing on Amazon, because then they send you emails when your people are on sale and coming up, and you can pre-order and everything. So well, this is going to be usually
on sale all the time.
I know. Amazon does a good job of that.
They do a good job of like sale.
Don't forget, you haven't read this one yet. Exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. This has been Killer Women with your host, Danielle Girard, and my guest, Lucinda Berry. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.